Hi, I'm Pham. Welcome back to the Zurich Zone. Today, I'm joined by two true customer champions, Jacqui Lennon and Priscilla Dell'Orto. So let's start off with Jacqui. Tell me a little bit about yourself. What's your background? What brought you here today? And tell me about a true customer moment you had that made you really excited about customers.
Hi, V. Thanks for having me. So I'm currently the head of the retail life insurance at Zurich in Australia, and I've worked in financial services for over 20 years. My customer obsession really started about 10, 12 years ago, and the key moment I remember which changed the trajectory of my career and how I was thinking about customer. Well, I was lucky enough to go to Stanford to do a course over there, and part of the course was going to D-School, and part of the D-School challenge was to go onto the streets and talk to customers about holidays. That was the challenge that we had, and I'm thinking, oh my God, there's no way any customer is going to give us any insights or share anything. And we had the most amazing conversations with people on the streets of San Francisco talking about holidays in Guatemala and how it reframed their whole expectations of family. And then I came home and I thought, that's just crazy Americans, and no one in Australia would be like that. So I challenged myself to go onto the streets of Sydney. So I went on, we were looking at building an app at the time, and I went around the bus stops of Sydney and asked people about their apps, and the stories I heard and the insights I gained was astonishing. And for me, it made me really realise that people sitting in an office don't really actually understand customers. It's politely called expert-led, but it's really quite an arrogant way to design things, and going out and talking to customers and really understand what's going on with them is the only way we should be thinking about products and services and experiences. So for me, that was a really transformative moment.
Isn't it interesting that we're all customers ourselves, but yet we never think in the mindset of the customer?
It's very odd because I think we compartmentalize it. So in insurance, for example, we think insurance needs are different to Netflix needs, but actually people's expectations go across all categories. So we do need to think like annoying customers all the time when we're designing our products and experiences, because that's what people are like. They don't mean to be annoying, but they have really high expectations.
Right. Priscilla, lovely to have you with us today too. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what was your key customer moment?
Sure, and thanks so much for having me. So I run Bain Company's customer practice for Asia Pacific. I'm a partner based in our Hong Kong office, and I've been in Asia for the last 15 years. I've been working on customer centricity now for almost 10 years, and my customer moment was during a workshop at one of my insurance clients. I was sitting in the room and we were discussing customer feedback on an app. Jacqui, to your point. And the feedback from customers was very simple. They just couldn't log into the app. Mm-hmm. They had issues with the login, and the forgot my password wasn't working. And it was just a poor experience for something that should be super simple. So there was a lot of debate in the room on how to fix it and what to do about it and why it's important, which is all good. And then the team started solutioning. And what they came up with was, well, we'll just put a video on our website explaining to the customers how to log into the app. Easy. And everyone was like, yeah, great solution. Yeah, great idea. And I'm sitting there thinking, what am I, like, hello, what am I missing? That's not going to work. If we need to put a video on the website, that's too hard. That it means that something's wrong with our login. So we should just rip it out and start over. And no one was just thinking, you know, from a perspective of the customer, and they themselves as customers of many other apps. It just was so strange that no one was actually thinking logically about how to solve the customer problem. And so I decided that I would be, you know, I could help. I could help them see things differently and help them fix things for customers in a much more thoughtful way.
And sorry, you mentioned customer centricity. That's just a word that's been around for ages, customer engagement, customer centricity. What do you think it's different about it today? Like, how has it evolved from your point of view?
Yeah, that's a great question. Especially in insurance, we see a lot of evolution. I think when I moved to Asia 9 years ago, I witnessed an evolution. I witnessed the start of the customer transformation in insurance. So at that point, a lot of my clients were starting for the first time to think about the end customer, to stop looking at their distributors as the customer, and really think about what are the needs of those end customers and how do we better serve them. And I think there was a lot of focus initially on customer experience. So really fixing pain points, and there was a lot of paper at the time and not much was digitized. And so it was really about fixing the basics around experience. And fast forward almost 10 years, and what you see now, some of the customer leaders in insurance and beyond are really thinking about the broader concept of customer centricity, which goes beyond experience and really thinks about everything that touches the customer. So products or propositions, experience, of course, engagement, pricing, brand, everything that the customer experience, marketing. When you get an email or a promotion from your bank asking you if you want a personal loan, that's still part of your experience with the bank. And yet organizations don't think about it that way.
Jacqui, in terms of customer centricity, I feel like there's a lot of roles now in insurance companies that didn't exist before. And I remember you were in a business once where literally there were no UI or UX designers, and you were the first one to bring in the first UI designer in our business. Like, what do you think the roles of the future in insurance companies need to be able to solve for customer problems?
Yeah, I was stunned when I joined the organisation and found that there was no designers, and not only no UI or UX, but no graphic designers, no design mindset whatsoever. And I think that design mindset is really important to embed in an organisation. It's not just something you bring in for a project. It's really how you think about the whole propositions, the customer journey, the language you use, the propositions you offer, the loyalty, the rewards, all of that. And that really requires, I call it a design mindset rather than like an analytical mindset or a user mindset. It's a real design mindset. And so I think it's so important to bring in those different capabilities. But if I fast forward in, 10 years into the future and I look at what I think businesses will be like, AI and technology is going to automate a lot of the business, right? So operational efficiency is going to have to be a given. You're going to have to be really streamlined. You're going to have to be frictionless. You're going to have to be really schmick at the operational perspective. So what's going to differentiate those companies that succeed? And I think it actually all comes down to customer understanding and empathy, and like a really deep human level empathy, and not what you think your customers should be doing, but what they are actually doing, and understanding the motivations and the emotional reasons behind that. And those companies that really get close to customers and understand that, I think will be able to design better experiences, better propositions, better products, better workplaces, and they will be the ones that will really succeed. So I don't know what the job title of those people will be, but I think it would be a really fun job. I love going and talking to customers and really spending time, that first person research and really feeling what they're feeling as they're going through a claims process or an application process to really get a sense of what's going on for them. So I think the companies that do that have more people thinking about that and doing that, will succeed in the future.
I think you make a great point about the design mindset. It's not just about designing something, about being a designer. And people often don't understand what we mean when we say design. And I think design mindset is exactly right. It's really about going back to what is that raw customer need? What is it that we can do for the customer? How do we drive value for the customer? And honestly, in insurance, it's not the same as, other industries, but there are some fundamentals. You want to get it right when you initiate that relationship with a new customer that for the first time is going to be covered by your insurance. You need to be there when they need you. That's claims. And that doesn't happen very often in some cases. It happens more frequently in other parts in other sectors within insurance, but it's still a very meaningful event and you need to get that right. And then finally, finding ways to engage more frequently with your customers, but not because you want them to engage with you. So how do we make them want to engage with us is more the question. So that I see all part of the design mindset that you talked about.
Yeah, and that test and learn mindset and the hypothesis, like we think it's this, let's try that. And the attention to detail and making things easy and simple, all of that so critical. And interesting listening to you talk about the different parts of the customer experience there, or the journey that a customer goes through. And what we often talk about is, particularly in insurance, so insurance is all about emotions. You're basically buying a promise that you hope that you never need, and you trust that the company will be there if you ever have to claim. So there's a whole lot of emotions going on there. And every opportunity that we engage with a customer is an opportunity to either build or destroy that trust. And we can either build on that relationship or destroy it. And it's the little things like, I called to change my address and you didn't update it. Well, we've now reduced your confidence that we're going to be there at your time of claim. So it's really understanding that whole experience is building on the whole customer's perception of whether you'll be there at claim time or not. And that's really all that we're there for. So it's so important to think about every opportunity when you're talking to customers and engaging with customers, intentionally or not intentionally, as a moment to build trust and confidence.
And particularly after COVID, right? Because during COVID, everything that was routine went online, right? So now the only reason why you actually interact with a human in service is if you really have an issue that requires a human. It's a difficult issue, it's complicated, it's emotional, you don't know what to do. And at that moment, really bringing the front line to help that customer in that moment where, digital reaches its limits is increasingly important. And that empathy has to be at the heart of everything that we design.
Yep.
I think it's really interesting that you've both mentioned that insurance is such an emotional purchase, yet a lot of people still think it's a bit of a grudge purchase. So how do you think we can move beyond that? What's the insurer's role to help people understand that the importance of insurance, particularly when you think about how underinsured some parts of the world are?
Yeah, I think, look, there are some areas, some parts of insurance where we are seeing a lot more engagement these days. Even younger customers are actually really interested in their health and wellness and well-being and longevity. And we are seeing actually a lot more interest in insurance from younger customers when it comes to health, for example. So the question to me is, how do we expose, the values and the benefits? Because again, imagine, yes, it's a grudge purchase, but why? Because it's an industry that has been built by actuaries and customer experience was never a consideration originally. So all of these products are difficult to understand. They're not transparent. You don't understand how they fit in a potential existing portfolio. You don't know if the cover is adequate for you or not. And it's complicated. It feels very complicated. So to me, one of the key responsibilities of insurers is to make it simpler for customers to understand what they need and what people like them tend to buy and why, and really view the insurer as an advisor that can help them navigate these complex topics. And in the health space, that can become, the insurer can become a partner in helping them live a healthier life.
And it's quite interesting at the moment where we're seeing like a duality in demographics at the moment in terms of like the population is aging in APAC. At the same time, you've got a lot of really young people coming up, right? So Jacqui, what do you think? How do we, as an insurer, cater to both generations in a way? Because you've got an aging population who is still very paper-based, and we talk about digital all the time. But then you've got a younger generation who are actually have the biggest purchasing power and influence on purchasing. So how do we cater for both of those?
So I think the first thing is picking up on some of the stuff that Priscilla was saying is really understand the customer needs, and they have quite different needs. And so I think gone are the days where you can have one product that caters for everyone. And I think that's what's happened in, particularly in life insurance. So we built one product and we put in more and more features to cater for everyone. And that's increased the complexity of the products and makes it feel very irrelevant for me because it just feels big and frightening. But if you can create different products that speak to the different challenges that the segments have, so younger people, what are they worried about? Health, it could be their mobile phone, it could be, all those bits and pieces around their day-to-day existence. How do we talk to them about what and help them imagine what life would be like without the health, without the wellness, without the phone, without whatever, and then help them understand that there's ways to protect around that. So I think there's opportunities to do that for the younger segment and start introducing them to insurance in smaller pieces so it doesn't become this massive, big life insurance piece because that feels irrelevant, but this feels like something I'm using every day and you're helping me protect that. I feel like there's ways to talk to that younger segment, and your point's really interesting as well around the younger people are more risk averse, I think. They've seen the world in its current state and they want to look after themselves. And so, aligning with their values, but also looking after them is a really interesting proposition. And I think a lot of opportunity in that space. But as insurers, I don't think we've traditionally been great at engaging with that cohort. Usually we just wait till people are older with bigger balances and need to have bigger insurance pieces. The elderly segment's an interesting challenge. If you look at a traditional life insurance product, the need for life insurance really goes down. They've paid off their debts. They're probably living off their retirement savings. So their need for insurance goes down. For life insurance, obviously for health insurance, it's still really relevant, becomes very expensive and unaffordable. But if you think about people in retirement, particularly in Australia, you see a pattern of people not wanting to spend their retirement balances because they're worried about a surprise event. And that's actually what insurance is all about, is about taking away the surprise events and turning it into a regular premium. And so I think we need to do some more work to think about what are those surprise events that are insurable, that would be affordable, that we can help people manage and take the scariness out of retirement for them. Because there's a lot of anxiety once people hit retirement because income's not coming in anymore and they're really worried about, will their money last? And so how can we help them with those worries?
Priscilla, thinking about product design, I feel like a lot of insurance products are designed for a certain type of person who has a certain linear, milestone life. For example, I didn't buy life insurance until I bought a house and I, settled down with my partner. And now younger people are putting off those milestones longer. So they're not buying a house because housing is unaffordable. They're not getting married. They're not having children straight away. So how do we think about insurance for a different demographic?
It's a great question. I think, look, we have to think about how do we make it about making them independent and, feeling good about being safe and independently protecting themselves. We are talking about a generation that is also less employed by big corporations for life. And, I got my first insurance policy when I was 21 and I joined, my first employer.
Yeah.
And I've honestly never had to think too much about insurance, especially when I was younger, because I was covered through work and no issue, right? I feel like young people today have, it's much more about the gig economy and they have much less stable careers in some cases. And so I think, how do we make it cool to take care of yourself? There's a lot going on, for example, within the high net worth space, for example, in China, with a lot of advertising campaigns built around this image of a strong, independent, professional woman who, thinks about her career and, does lots of different things. But she doesn't have a house or a family or a husband or children. But she is someone who certainly comes across as strong and independent and someone who can take care of herself. So I feel like we need to help. These people need our help even more, right? Because they don't have some of the support from other safety nets that we have had in our lives. And so I think that making that the new normal is what we need to do.
That's so cool, because that was that strategy of empowering women because they're worth it was very successful for De Beers Diamonds, I think, actually. Mm-hmm. So you didn't have to wait to be engaged. You could strong independent women went and bought their own diamonds. But the conversation about gig economy and different lifestyles and different ways of working is a really interesting challenge for insurance companies, because insurance companies, as you noted, have a lot of actuaries that love a lot of data, and we've got these new ways of working and these new lifestyles, and there's not enough data to be really confident about what that looks like and the risk that you're underwriting. So we're kind of it's interesting to try to get that balance right between we need to have different products and different solutions and work harder for these different customer segments, but in a space where we don't fully appreciate all the risks because it's quite new and we haven't seen it all play out yet. So it's a great conundrum for an insurance company to lean into, I have to say.
Yeah. I know that recently in your business, Jacqui, you tested an AI facial scanning tool.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we assume about customers is that we want to remove friction from them. We want things to be less hard. So when you apply for life insurance, typically you have to go through a medical check. Sometimes you have to like get a blood test. But thinking that customers might not want to do that because that's really quite invasive, facial scanning is actually quite a good solution for this. But we did a test. You did a test for this recently.
We did.
And the results were quite different, right? So I guess the question that I want to ask is that how do we strike the balance between giving customers less friction and making things easier for them and less costly, but then not make them feel that we're invading their privacy and that we're not doing something that's a bit unethical?
Yeah, so the test was really interesting. As you noted, we tested whether people would be willing to do a facial scan instead of going through the underwriting process. And these are customers who had gone through an underwriting process, so they really understood how difficult it could be. And what was interesting is the number of people that said, no, not really. And there was a couple of reasons they didn't want to share the data, but it really, it was trust. There was a real trust gap around how would we use the data and was the data accurate? And so we were all surprised because why would you want to go and see a doctor and getting a blood test? We feel far more invasive and intrusive and has heaps more data available than a facial scan. But as we know, humans are beautiful, complex beings, and this is how they were feeling about the particular facial scan. And so I think we need to start. We can't wait for them to realise that there's that we're going to not use the data for nefarious means. So we need to just start putting it out there and think about where in the customer journey we put it out there. You know, do we put it out there after underwriting so we can start collecting some data and they can see it's not going to impact on their premium, but it's actually a useful way to get an insight into their own health and wellness. And once we start getting more use of that technology, I think the trust in the technology will increase, and then they will hopefully build trust in the organisation because we're not using it to rip them off. We're giving them insights about their health. We're not changing their premiums. In fact, maybe their premiums could go down because they're healthier than they were before. And so we need to start doing those things. And we need to not use customer testing as a binary yes or no. It's a piece of information, and we need to think about what are we going to do with that information. But I think if we didn't go forward with everything that people had concerns about, there wouldn't be as much innovation because anything that's really new is going to make people nervous. And so we just need to go in with some open eyes and maybe have lower expectations about the uptake to start with. But I think if we don't start introducing innovation, we're going to miss the boat.
Yeah, I think there's a huge concept around responsible innovation. With technology now, with AI, with all of these things around, especially the health part of things. And the reality is that people are afraid that we will know too much about them and we will start using it against them.
Yeah.
So it's all good if you get a discount because you're healthy, but what if I'm not healthy? And so I think that the reality is that we haven't cracked it yet. We haven't really figured out. We've punted on this problem and we've tried to kick the can down the road. And now we're talking about responsible AI and all kinds of responsible uses of technology. But the fundamental question in my mind is, what is the future state that is compelling and creates value for both the insurer and the customer? And can we envision that and then work backwards from there and experiment while the technology is improving?
Yep.
Because we don't have the technology today to
Correct.
do it right.
Yep.
But as you said, we can get there gradually. But I think we do need to have clarity on that end game, or at least that aspirational future state. And what is the trust contract with the customer for the use of some of these technologies? What I've seen that is already happening in places like India is more the give to get model.
Yeah.
So if you want to do the scan, you get some benefits. You get a lower initial premium, or you get other, you get a voucher or whatever incentive. Or depending on how much you're willing to share about your health history, you can get access to further discounts or other perks. And that at least puts the customer in a position to choose and to feel like they're in control of their face and their image. And I tried one of those machines, by the way, at an insurance conference in Hong Kong a a couple months ago, and it said my skin age is 26. So I thought it was brilliant.
I got a similar age, and I'm wondering if it was a sales strategy. But yeah, it was very flattering.
You were talking about health and wellness before. It's quite an interesting space for insurers to go into, especially when you think about gamification. And one of the things I read recently was about how Pokemon Go has like really changed consumer behavior, because you had people who were like normally lethargic all of a sudden getting off the couch and doing stuff. How do we leverage off companies like that to sort of get people to think about their health and wellness more?
That's great. I'm obsessed with all of that. I mean, I have an Oura Ring. I see you have one too. I have the Apple Watch. I track everything. And I do think these devices and technologies help us to live healthier lives. For example, I used to go to bed really, really late. And now I'm obsessed with my sleep score. And so I really try to go to bed much earlier. I really try to get those 7 hours. And the first thing I do when I wake up is I check my sleep score. I mean, maybe I've gone too far, but I think it's a brilliant way to incentivize customers and people in general to be more healthy. And I think insurers have big strategic questions around. Life insurers have big strategic questions about how they want to play in health. You know, is it going to be, do they want to get into provision? Is it going to be, a partnership kind of asset light model more focused on prevention? Is it going to be more focused on recovery and being there for the customer when they really need you beyond primary care? So there's lots of different models that insurers are exploring, and I think the value will be in understanding what kind of models are going to be accepted by customers at what point in time. I do think there's huge demand for health and wellness. The question is, what is the role of the insurer, particularly if you are not the market leader in your market? Some of the largest insurers can make that market. They can build ecosystems and can be at the center of those ecosystems. Other insurers can participate in ecosystems. And so there's questions around where do you play and how do you win by partnering with different providers?
Yeah, it is a great question, and the permission that you have from your customers and that trust business as well, which is like, how are you going to use this health data that you have on me? And I think that influences the amount of permission that the customers give you to play in that health ecosystem space. But we're all aligned with a common goal of we want you to be healthy and to stay healthy and get healthier depending where you are in that life experience. But whether many customers still see insurers as you're only doing this to avoid paying a claim, and it's really hard. We need to really overcome that trust gap to be able to really lean into the role I think we could play in that space. It's an interesting problem.
Yeah, I'd like to ask you both also, like, how do you see the role of an insurer going forward? You mentioned ecosystems and how insurers could be the orchestrator of ecosystems. Thinking beyond life insurance and health and wellness, what other, and if we think about P&C, what is the role, do you think, going forward of an insurer as an orchestrator? Like, how do you see that playing out?
You're looking at me. So I think what's really interesting, you've said insurance is a grudge purchase, and we need to move away from it being a grudge purchase, but not every day does someone wake up off their own bat with nothing else happening in their lives and wanting to buy insurance. There's usually a life event that's happened, like I've bought a car, or I bought a house, or I've had a kid, or my parents just got really ill and they can't fund their health needs. So something has happened in their lives. And I think from an insurance perspective, it's like, how do we engage with those other things and actually be part of that? Because no one wants to buy insurance, but everyone wants to have a car that is on the road that can take them to places that they want to be. So how do we be part of that transport ecosystem or the health ecosystem or the wellness ecosystem, and thinking about it that way rather than as a standalone piece on the side that we hope people remember to add on. But the role I think that we as an insurer can play will depend on the scale of the insurer and the trust and the permission that the customer gives it to play in the ecosystem. So whether it could be the center, I'm not convinced there's a lot of places where the insurer gets to be the center of the ecosystem. I feel like the insurer really needs to go to the other events that are happening in people's lives and be part of that ecosystem. But I'm interested in your thoughts.
I think it depends on what type of insurance we're talking about and the position of the insurer in that market.
Yeah.
I think one interesting area is providing access to something that customers would otherwise not have access to, whether it's a new device, whether it's a new screening technology, whether it's a second medical opinion with a doctor that they wouldn't otherwise be able to access, whether it's the best network of repairs for your car that is completely exclusive and really helpful when you need it.
Yeah.
So providing access to scarce or new, scarce commodities or innovations, I would say, has been an interesting way for insurers to build such ecosystems. For example, in health or in motor or in home, partnering with banks to get into that mortgage journey to begin with. No one walks into banking is very similar. No one walks into the bank wanting a mortgage.
Yeah.
They just want to buy a house. They don't want the mortgage. If they can avoid it, they will.
Yeah.
But how do you get more into those moments?
The insurance industry is filled with lots of buzzwords and new products that we're trying out to engage customers more and get them to buy insurance. One of those ones that I'm really interested in at the moment is parametric insurance. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of different use cases for it. What do you think are the most interesting ones at the moment? And why should customers care about parametric insurance? How do we explain that to them?
I think that, as you said, there are a lot of buzzwords. Last year, I probably said personalization and Gen AI more than 1,000 times. So yes, and now we have a new one. So that's good. I think, look, from my perspective, it can be really innovative and interesting for risks that are really, really hard to estimate. Back to your data topic. It's something that can really bring the customer and the actuary together. Because in the absence of a tried and tested way to model a risk that is really uncertain, then we are unable to bring value to the customer the way we would want, because we're blocked internally, or we cannot articulate the value to the customer. So I think parametric insurance can really help with some of those risks, where you have a very clear agreement up front with the customer. It feels like very transparent. It speeds up the payment of claims because there's no assessment. There's, if the level of the river reaches a certain level, then you pay. So it's black or white. There's no debate. There's no adjudication, complex problem. So I think it can create great experiences for customers. But I think it's still very early stage, and it's all about test and learn. We need to experiment more, and we need to find, what are those categories that are suited for this type of construct.
It's in those sorts of products are super interesting because customers feel more confident that they're going to get paid, and they know when they're going to get paid, which is great because that's what we want. But then what's interesting is when they don't get paid, but they've still suffered a loss, and somehow they then still they feel like it's unfair. So it's really interesting to try and get the line right. It creates confidence, and sometimes you end up paying when there's no actual loss, and then sometimes you don't pay and there has been loss. But it creates confidence because customers should know when they're going to get money or not.
Yeah, and the other thing that I'm really interested in recently is just how insurance companies are more and more comfortable with not being exposed in terms of their brand, and they're embedding themselves into different partnerships. So there's been some really interesting partnerships with insurance companies, like if I think about IKEA and Apple and Tesla. What from your perspective are some of the most interesting partnerships, and where should insurers go that we haven't thought about?
Everywhere. No, that's probably a bit bold. That's a bold insurance ambition. I think we need to be with those brands that customers trust, that are talking to customers at those life points that matter, that we talked about, whether it's buying a house or a car or those sorts of things. To be honest, there hasn't been that many fascinating ones in the Australian market yet. From a partnership perspective, it's been a very old-fashioned mindset about insurance needs to be sold and not bought. So we haven't, certainly on the life side, got very good partnerships. On the P&C side, actually, when I was flying out here, what I thought was clever when I went to Uber and I put in that I needed an Uber to go to the airport, the Qantas travel insurance popped up on my phone, and I thought that's delightful. Like it's contextual. It's a brand I know, but not an Uber brand. It's really easy to apply. It's right on the screen, and I've got 4 minutes to wait because the Uber still hasn't arrived yet, and I often forget to book travel insurance. So those, I think they're really clever, those little things where they've used lots of insights to find you at exactly the moment and say, hey, have you gotten anything? Have you gotten travel insurance? I thought that was very clever.
And Priscilla, in Asia, like obviously it happens more and more in Asia. Like, can you tell me some examples that's been surprising to you?
There's lots of little examples everywhere, I would say. The one that I found interesting was I was booking a restaurant, and then I got the offer to also book a car and the phone insurance. So to insure my phone in case I forget it in the taxi, or, you're going out. You're going out for a fun night out, watch your phone. So there was one like that. There was another one that I saw where it was still in Hong Kong, people love to eat. So there are a lot of innovations around food and restaurant bookings and all those types of things. So there's quite a lot happening in that space. The other one was similar, where you basically you could be insured if you had to wait longer than, because it was one of those places where you have to just walk in and put your name down.
Yeah.
And so you could get a payout if you had to wait for your table more than, 35 minutes or something like that, which I found.
It almost feels like gambling at that point.
It just feels like initially I'm just literally standing there thinking, why? What's the point?
Yeah.
And then it's what you said, it's just gamification. What I would question is, what's the model? Like, what's the end game?
Yeah.
It's a lot of experiments. And so I think if it's about putting your, is it about brand and appealing to a younger cohort of customers? Is it about acquiring new customers? But then how are you going to monetize those customers if you are a life insurer and you are now partnering with, doing restaurant deals, right? So I think there's been a lot of experimentation, which is good.
Yeah.
Now I'm seeing some of our clients really starting to kind of take a step back and thinking through, okay, so how do I get from this kind of customer acquisition model to, truly monetizing these customers? And I think that's where things start to go south, because you move away from that engagement objective to the monetization one. And there's always some friction there, especially when you have agents and you have to go kind of online to offline. Yeah. So I don't think anyone has cracked it yet, but a lot of innovation happening for sure.
Yeah. One other thing that comes up all the time, maybe less so now, but for a long time, people were talking about the Metaverse. And like, there's a lot of young people on there now. Some adults are moving into the Metaverse. And I know like some banks have started testing in this space and trying to sell people stuff in this space. Do you see a role for insurers in this space? And is it ethical for us to be starting to like talk to young people before they can actually buy insurance?
Sorry, I'm just editing all my initial thoughts on, is it ethical to talk to young people in the metaverse? Because that sounds like actually it's really creepy and not ethical. But I think actual financial literacy is a problem. So I think talking to young people about a financial life, cash flow management, insurance as well. People often talk about investing and stocks and bank accounts and loans, and hardly anyone talks about insurance and the need to protect your assets. So I think there's an opportunity to talk to people in a fun way, in a gamified way, young people, about those sorts of things. The questions I get from my daughter and my stepdaughters, it's clear they've got no idea about finances because they're asking really basic questions. And these are people in their late teens and early 20s. And so we need to teach people so they can be those strong, empowered women taking control of their lives and strong, empowered men taking control of their lives. So we need to help and teach them more. I don't know if the metaverse is the right space to do it. It was something that everyone talked about for a very long time. There were some really interesting things happening in the space and lots of games, but I'm not sure I'm just not sure. I don't know enough to be able to speak confidently about whether the metaverse is the space we want to be talking to kids about financial literacy. I don't know, Priscilla?
I think today is the metaverse. Yesterday, many years ago, it was MySpace. Next year, it's going to be something else. I think we have to think about this in a kind of channel agnostic way. There's always going to be the new channel that we don't know about because we are too old and all the young kids are on. So I think it's more about defining what role does that play for the insurer, and is it, again, a branding topic? Is it about reaching new audiences? Is it about creating a culture of experimentation for our employees? Again, I think it depends on what the fundamental objectives are, but I fully agree on financial literacy. I think that there is much more that we can do as a financial services industry to educate not only young people, but also adults on how to be financially independent, how to take care of your assets, how to save for a rainy day. Yeah, absolutely.
I remember in one of my previous roles, I was trying to teach people about the importance of talking to customers. So I got some people in, just random people from market research, and got some senior executives to interview them, like just to meet with them and talk about their financial lives. And after that session, they came up to me and they said, "Where did you hire the actors?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Where did you get the actors?" I said, "They're not actors, they're just real people." And they're like, "Oh, they're doing terrible things with their money." Oh. And I'm like, "I know." And that's the level of literacy that we have. And they're like, "We have to call them back and help them because they're doing it all wrong." And that's why it's so important to talk to people, because we all know enough to be able to manage our finances properly. But actually most consumers work really hard to do something with their money, and they're not always making the right decisions.
And in Australia, at least you have a regulator that is really really focused on protecting customers. And, you have a lot of challenges, I'm sure, because of that. But at least, you have some level of protection.
Yes.
Many other markets in Asia don't have anything like that, and so customers are really left alone to figure out all of these topics.
Yeah,
I'd love to ask both of you where you get your inspiration from. Like, how do you see where the next customer trend is coming from? If I was someone who wanted to know more about the customers, other than actually going to talk to customers, what do you recommend I should be doing or looking at or reading?
Look, we are all customers, right? And as Jacqui said, the customer expectations are certainly set outside of the financial services industry. And the bar continues to rise because it's being risen by big techs and, startups and whatever cool company is the coolest today. So I think, it's really about just experiencing things as a customer, reading about design trends, and I read a lot about art, about design, about sports. There is a lot of innovation happening in sports tech as well. I read a lot about I read a lot about AI these days, of course, as we all do. I listen to a lot of podcasts on health and longevity and performance. So I think it's a lot of different sources. I cannot pinpoint, one source or one newsletter, or I think there's a lot of interesting trends coming from retail for sure. And I really like how the retail industry is tackling kind of online to offline and truly omni-channel. And I think there are a lot of lessons for FS in there to be learned.
What about you, Jacqui?
Similar, lots of podcasts and reading, less about sport. I read and listen to a lot of sort of tech podcasts and read a lot of books around, I read a lot of fiction, which I actually think is really great for understanding other people's lives and just that theory of mind. And that's not all the way that Jacqui sees the world. But also podcasts around tech and looking at what the big brands are doing. So if you're thinking about what people's expectations are going to be, if you're looking at brands that they interact with all the time and what they're doing, that's going to drive their expectations of customer, whether it's Microsoft or McDonald's or retailers or TikTok. That sort of environment will influence millions of people, tens of millions of people. So you really need to be thinking about what they're doing. And then the other way I think you see the world, if you adopt the design mindset, is stuff happens and it's like, why did that happen? Why did they design it this way? How could we, be really curious. How could we bring that to financial services? What would that look like in an insurance process? And really just stop and question lots of things. That can be very fun and very annoying, because now I can't look at door handles the same way, because door handles are quite poorly designed generally, and so you just end up with a whole lot of frustration in your life. But I think it's good to keep that level of curiosity.
Door handles
and toilet flushes and taps and showers in hotels.
Yeah.
There's too many options. It's too hard.
I'll check them out here.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, it's been such a great conversation, and I wish we could keep going. But before we finish, is there one more thing that you'd like to tell me that I should walk away from today, that I should know about the customer in my role?
I would remind you that customers are messy, complex humans with a whole lot of emotions, some of which they know and some of which they don't know. And the more time you spend with end customers and really watch them engaging with your products, understanding your products, the ecosystem and the lives they live, the better insights you'll have every single day. So I cannot recommend spending more time with customers.
Fully agree with that. And I would also say, because insurance loves data,
yes,
we have so much data on these people, and yet we don't use it.
Yes.
We need to be better at breaking the silos that hinder organizations' abilities to bring together customer data from lots of different places, and really using that data to know the customer better than anyone else. And then from there, you know what they need, you know what their preferences are, you know what their behaviors are, and you can really design and build remarkable experiences, products, services, and so on. So I feel like art and science, I would say. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was lovely to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bea. Thanks, Priscilla.